The good news is we're all in this together. And when we see we're together, we can work things out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell. You took yourself off the screen just in time. Okay, every day I get up and look at the news and find everything I can about climate change and energy, and I assemble things into a list of articles, a synopsis of each, about 50 words long, and a link. And I put 10 to 15 of those together at my website, geoharvey.com. You can go to the website and see the stuff we're talking about. And the website has a calendar. You can click on the calendar and see the dates of the things that we talk about and
yeah,
look
I'll
them
try
up.
to call attention to some of the ones I found compelling, because there's some good articles this week.
There's one that's amazing. The last one, the very last one.
That's from who?
I could check, but
we'll get to it.
It's from
the last one.
Energy Storage News.
Okay. Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Stunning. And it was astonishing enough that I actually checked it again today and found that there was an article about it in Motley Fool. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've heard of it. It's an investment.
Investment. It's for investments, and they were saying here's some stocks that you could invest in, and this is why, and we'll get to it.
Yeah.
I hope. Okay.
Well, I'm sitting there playing with these mice here, and I'm adjusting the camera. So if I'm looking like a deer in the headlights, it's because I'm staring at the monitor somewhere. Well, let's get back to George.
Yeah, let's get back to George. Actually, I don't care. You could have both of us up. I don't need to have the exposure. Anyway, we have an item to start the day off, and
we got a picture coming up too.
Yeah, today is the 11th of January, the date that we're recording this. It'll keep running on television for Lord knows how long. But we start always a week earlier. So we're starting on Thursday, January 4th, with an item from Clean Technica. And we have a picture on this.
The Louisiana flood of 2016.
That's right, which we have already used once.
Yeah, the picture looks familiar.
Yeah, but it was at the...
A little damp down there.
A little damp. That picture came with the article from Clean Technica. So, got a title?
Louisiana flood. Oh, wrong title. Louisiana is sinking and the seas are rising.
Okay.
The government mulls aggressive plan to force abandonment. Whoa!
This is crazy. Climate change is causing the sea to rise. Mismanagement of water resources and pumping water and oil causes some land to subside. Now, the state of Louisiana is coming up with a plan that would declare much of the coast to be uninhabitable and aggressively force the abandonment of the region by offering buyouts and raising taxes on those who stay behind.
It's interesting because the people who live here don't want to believe in global warming.
They also are major Trump voters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cameron Parish, we reported on this earlier, was the county that, of all counties in the United States, had the highest percentage of pro-Trump voters, and I think the whole county is scheduled to be abandoned.
This, by the way, is the farthest most west county in Louisiana.
Yeah, on the coast.
On the coast. I'll give you a quick takeaway.
Yeah.
As sea level rise continues intensifying over the coming decades, a vast number of people will be forced to migrate elsewhere, not just Louisiana.
Florida.
Okay. This will mark quite a departure from the, quote, rising seas must not be spoken about or acknowledged as a reality attitude.
Well, there are people who are saying, no, the sea isn't rising, the land is subsiding.
Yeah.
And, that by itself is just, I don't know if it's disingenuous or a flat out lie, but the fact is, you can calculate, we know how much the glaciers have melted.
Yeah.
We know how much Greenland and Antarctica have lost in terms of ice.
Yeah.
We know the change in the temperature of the water. I mean, this stuff has all been recorded for years and years and years.
This is, believe it or not, science.
Science. And science tells us how much bigger the water is. And on top of that, we've got satellites that can measure the height of the sea.
I didn't know we had that.
Oh yeah, and within a very close margin.
Yeah.
And you know, there was a recent thing where it turned out that the satellite measurement and the calculated measurement were different, with the satellite measurements showing that the sea rise was about 5% lower than the calculated measurement. And the scientists looked at this and were horrified to discover that they had failed to take something into account, which was that the rising sea itself was putting pressure on the land to cause it to subside.
Wow.
So, you know, this is not...
You can't win.
You can't win. No, well, there is a way you could win, and that's, you know...
Face up the music.
Yeah, exactly. But somebody's going to have to do that, or we're just going to get deeper and deeper into trouble. And, you know, a political party that does that, I think, is kind of buying itself out of the next election, maybe.
Well, it certainly seems to look that way.
At some point, they have to pay the piper, as they say.
There's a quick takeaway from here, and it's not just about Louisiana. Not everybody is going to live where they are now and continue their way of life. And that is an emotional and terrible reality to face.
Yeah.
You know, many of these people have been living where they're living for generations.
Yeah.
You know, they've been there since Columbus.
Yeah. Well, that happens actually to be true for some of them, not many of them, but we will get back to that.
We got another one coming up that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Edward Teller warned the oil industry about carbon dioxide and climate change 6 decades ago.
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica. In November 1959, the well-known physicist Edward Teller, he was involved in the Manhattan Project.
I was going to mention
that. He was one of the really
I was
great
going to explain
physicists.
who he was, but you just did.
Was the guest of honor at the American Petroleum Institute celebration to mark its 100th anniversary of the oil industry in America. In his remarks, he warned that climate change caused by carbon dioxide emissions would cause rising seas and destroy coastal cities. Well, by golly. I mean,
there's something that is mentioned in this article that's worth looking at.
Yeah.
If you got your pencil and paper ready. It's a video called Merchants of Doubt.
Yes.
And it's well worth seeing.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, there are people who either make or protect their money by denying climate science.
Oh, sure.
And they are, in many cases, flat out ruthless about who gets hurt as a result of their activities.
Money talks.
Okay.
Well, let's move along. We got another picture here coming up.
We do, and this is in inuth.com. This is INU, capital, th.com.
In youth,
I don't know.
Well, in case you don't know it, those are cacao plants.
From which comes chocolate.
Absolutely. And what this is saying here is kind of scary. Chocolate could go extinct in 30 years.
Well,
but scientists have a plan.
Yeah, and the plan is scary too, but it's not as scary as chocolate becoming extinct. A NOAA study, that's National Oceanographic and Aeronautic and Atmospheric Administration, said cacao plants, which are the source of chocolate, face the threat of extinction as a result of climate change. The cacao plants require specific conditions, including uniform temperatures, abundant rain, high humidity, and a nitrogen-rich soil to thrive.
I think there's a map on this website
that tells.
And there's not too many places in the world where this stuff will grow.
Yeah. But scientists at UC Berkeley, and also with help from Mars Candy Company, hope to save them through genetic modification. Mm-hmm. So basically what we're facing here is the possibility, on the one hand, that chocolate plants, the cacao plants, will become extinct. On the other hand, that we can keep them alive by modifying them genetically, or a third possibility, that we do nothing.
Well, then we're going to lose the chocolate.
Well, Maybe the scientists are wrong, but this is not likely. I mean, this is something that has been in the cards, scientifically for years. They've known that.
They've known about
Yeah.
this. They've known it. Well, my nephew works for Mars,
Oh, okay.
and I talked to him about it. And he says, "Oh yeah, that's a big thing down there. They're really putting a lot of money into this."
Yeah,
Well, hey, it's their lifeblood.
it's their lifeblood.
I don't blame them.
I used to work in New Jersey in a town that had a big Mars factory in it, I think.
That might be where he is.
Hackettstown?
I don't know where he actually works. He lives in Morristown, but
Well, he could live in Morristown and work in Hackettstown.
well, he's
They're
at
not
corporate
very far.
headquarters, and I've seen pictures of his corporate headquarters, and there's all these M&M guys
Yes.
hanging out in front of the building there, little
Yeah.
M&Ms with legs on them, and smiley faces.
Yep, that's the area.
Yeah.
Okay, we're up to Friday, January 5th.
Well, here's an article by someone we all know and love, and it's called "We Are in Trouble." And I introduce you to the author of the article.
Some people know me, and I think possibly fewer than that people love me, but it's called We Are in Trouble. And it's in Green Energy Times. From an environmental point of view, we are in serious trouble. Most people are entirely unaware of how bad things are. We cannot continue things as they are. Nature will prevent it. We will have to provide for carbon-free power in the near future, including utility-scale solar and wind power. And the statistics behind this article are scary.
Yes, they are. Well, what we just read is a good summary of the article.
We've lost something like 80% of our wildlife
And here-
already.
Here's right from the ending, because it's appropriate. We cannot continue things as they are. Nature will prevent that. We will have to provide for carbon-free power in the near future, including utility-scale solar and wind power. To do that, we need a good plan permitting it. The only alternative is to do it without adequate planning.
Without adequate planning.
And we see what that leads to.
Yeah, we do. And here in Vermont, we could just say, okay, we're not going to have utility scale solar, we're not going to have wind power, and what we're going to do instead is import all of our power from someplace else, which means transmission lines. Thank you very much. I'm not looking forward to having the transmission lines that we would need to do that.
No, I don't like, well, as you well know, I don't like transmission lines. I don't mind if they're buried, but if you can see them.
You got to pay for them if they're going to be buried.
Yeah, it's going to cost more money.
Of course, they'd be more
They're
resilient.
more reliable.
But nevertheless, it would mean that people in Michigan and New York and Quebec would have the jobs, and we would be paying the bills.
Well, I think we're going to talk a little bit about hydro. I was doing that on the side because I read a big article on Hydro Quebec.
Yes, we had one last week.
I'm looking at a
as matter
map of
fact.
Canada, and northern Canada, all across pretty much, is just loaded with water,
Yeah,
loaded with lakes.
yeah.
I'm looking at it and saying Canada could probably provide enough power for the Western Hemisphere, if not the world.
Quite possibly, yeah, quite possibly. On the other hand, do you want to have all your eggs in one basket? I mean, really,
Well,
that's what it
sometimes
boils
we do
down
now
to.
anyhow.
Yeah, one of the things that we have to remember about this is we could outsource our power, but the federal government, not just one branch of it, but two, have warned us that we have to be prepared for power outages lasting from 1.5 to 3.5 years.
They've talked about that.
And when we outsource our power, that means that we are last on the line.
Yeah.
That means we would be the last people to get it back again.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if we have power here, then we can get it back quickly. And if we have it built for resilience, then we won't lose our power anyway.
Well, it's an iffy thing because when you look at the largest power company in Vermont, ultimately it's owned by the government of Quebec. Ultimately it is.
Yeah,
A
that's
definite
true.
chain of command.
That's true.
Whoa.
Okay, we are up to, and we're still on January 5th, an article from Clean Technica. This is an unusual picture.
Yeah, let me get that picture up here. This is
I wonder how many
Crescent
people.
Dunes concentrating solar power.
Yeah, without the sun, without the heliostats projecting all the light onto the tower, that tower would be really, really bright if all the heliostats were projecting onto
Yeah,
it.
they are. The towers get very
They
bright.
get very hot.
Well, let's read about this one.
Yep.
Renewable energy shines and coal dims in a new federal report.
This is something I've been reading over and over and over again. It's like everybody is saying, well, coal is doomed, and it got doomed and doomed and doomed this last week. The latest energy infrastructure update from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is called FERC, is packed with good news for natural gas and renewables, but not for coal. FERC anticipates 20,650 megawatts of retirements of coal power plants, and only 1,920 megawatts of new plants units are planned. Now, those
That's
planned,
about 10 to 1.
yeah, but those planned units, do you think they're going to come
Some of them
online?
aren't going to happen.
Yeah, but natural gas and renewables are still growing fast. So,
And a quick takeaway here. Coal's most stalwart customer, power generation, will continue to bow out of the scene in favor of natural gas and renewable energy.
yep,
A stunning loss of status for coal.
yep, and we're
Just
going
a
to
few
see.
years ago, coal accounted for half of U.S. power,
Yeah, now it's about 30%,
24.
24%.
As of November 2017, it's 24%.
And it's not operating at full capacity. It's operating. It's the capacity factor is dropped on the
It's
coal
kind
that's
of
there.
turned almost standby now.
Yeah, it's this is not good for people who are in.
This concentrating solar power is coming on slowly, but I think it's going to come on strong.
Well, we
It
saw
doesn't
that
have
beautiful.
it doesn't have to be in a desert.
No, we saw that beautiful thing in southern France.
Yeah.
Really pretty operation. That you look at it, looked kind of like a drive-in theater almost.
It did, didn't it? Yeah.
But nevertheless,
But the good thing about concentrated solar power is it's easy to store.
yeah,
You can store it as heat,
yeah.
basically.
Although honestly,
Yeah.
I think that concentrating solar power is never going to take off really big, and the reason is because my thinking is that the cost of batteries will go down so much that
won't need
concentrating
it.
solar will not be needed.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, let's look at Toshiba.
Toshiba. This is from the Japan News.
Toshiba to sell nuclear unit Westinghouse in a $4.6 billion deal.
A subsidiary of Canada's Brookfield Asset Management Incorporated plans to buy Westinghouse, the bankrupt nuclear services company, from Toshiba Corporation for $4.6 billion. Brookfield Business Partners LP and institutional partners plan to use use $1 billion of equity and $3 billion of long-term debt financing to buy Westinghouse. Now,
The nuclear may be the next orphan.
you know, the amount of money that was lost. Which of the was it? It wasn't Vogtle that got closed. It was Summer.
What?
The
No, Vogel's still active, yeah.
yeah, but was it Summer where they had 2 reactors that they were building and they decided to scrap them?
I don't remember the one, but we did talk about it.
It was in
Yep.
South Carolina.
Yeah, it was down that
And
way.
you know, the amount of money that they have lost for those 2 reactors is double it's more than double what they're buying Westinghouse for.
Huh.
So somebody's
Sound like a good idea.
no, somebody's making a bet on this, and you know, this is one of those bets that I would categorize as a bit risky.
Well, this sort of sums it up. Construction of new nuclear plants globally has dropped to the lowest level in a decade,
Yeah.
following renewed safety concerns after Fukushima
Well,
and
yeah, other problems
considerations.
as well. I mean, another thing that we could mention here is the 2 reactors at Hinkley C in Somerset in the UK are going to cost $29 billion. So that's 14
Well,
and
I
a half
think I've already bet you that
billion
they're never going to happen either.
Yeah, and so each of those reactors is going to cost, and they're not Westinghouse reactors, but each of them is going to cost $14.5 billion. And here Westinghouse is being sold, the whole company, for $4.5 billion.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a bargain.
It sounds like a bargain until you realize that
It's risky.
it's got a lot of
Quite
risk
risky.
associated with it. There's a reason Westinghouse went broke. Okay, we're up to Saturday.
Yeah, we got a nice picture here
I was
coming
going
up.
to say November, but it's January 6th. A nice picture.
Yeah, this is a wave crashing over a home in Scituate, Mass.
Yep, and this
Did
is
you
from,
live in Scituate once?
I lived near there. I
Yeah,
lived
I
in
thought you did.
Plymouth and Kingston.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It reminds me of, I used to work in a building that was a warehouse. It had been converted into offices and retail space and so forth. But I used to work in a building that was right on the ocean. There was another warehouse.
This building's right on the ocean.
Yeah, there was
too.
another warehouse between it and the ocean, and then between that and the ocean there was a road and a seawall. And I remember going down and seeing, it was either Hurricane Bob or the perfect storm, the waves coming in and hitting that seawall so hard that it blew the rocks in the seawall that were, they were about 5 feet long and 2.5 feet wide and 1.5 feet tall. These are heavy. And it just blew them out to sea.
Like they were pebbles. Huh?
And the waves crashing against the seawall went over a 3-story warehouse.
Well, that's kind of what's going on right here in
Yeah.
the picture. We brought it up
It's
again.
kind of scary.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah. Anyway, this is from Clean Technica. And did you read the title?
I have not. I'm just about to.
Okay.
It shows you the waves, but it's about a different weather phenomenon.
Yes.
Wrong one. Wind chill advisories up as Arctic air pushes across the country.
The latest energy infrastructure update. Oh, I'm sorry.
This
I'm
is
reading.
the winter storm moved out from the
I'm
northeast.
sorry. I was laughing at you getting to the wrong one, and I got to the wrong one.
Duh.
The winter storm moved out. Moved out from the northeast, and the winter cold moved in. A combination of winds, high tide, and a supermoon produced the highest tide around the Boston area has ever seen. So this is the highest tide that has ever happened in Boston.
In Boston.
But
We'll touch base on this again.
Yeah, but the Boston area wasn't alone in its misery. Up and down the East Coast, tens of thousands spent a frigid night without power. So the sea level's rising, and Boston just had its highest tide ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some interesting pictures. I think it's in this article, or maybe one that's coming up.
Yeah.
It's the one coming up. There's all sorts of pictures.
Yeah.
There's a picture in this one. Well, I read what I got there. Takeaway.
Yeah.
It's colder in Cleveland than Greenland.
Yes.
Colder in Minneapolis than Murmansk.
Yes.
It's never colder in Minneapolis than Murmansk.
Well, it's not usually colder here than it is in Anchorage, Alaska either,
that's
but
true,
we'll
too.
get back to that.
Numb's the word in North Dakota at -1. Cars were frozen in a parking lot turned lake of ice in Revere, Massachusetts. And that's the picture I'm thinking of, because there's about 20 cars in there.
And they're just in
And
blocks of ice.
When I first saw this, I thought this is a picture of the Arctic Ocean with ice flows.
Yes.
No, each ice, well, what my clue was, there's things sticking up out of the ice flow. What are they? They look like windshield wipers. They are windshield wipers. And here's about 20 cars that are buried up to their hood in water.
Yeah.
They're never going to run again.
Well, not only are they buried in the water, but the water's completely frozen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be...
And the ironic part of it is they were told to park there. It was a safe parking area.
Yeah.
It was in a high school parking lot, I guess.
Yeah, well, and maybe that some of those cars will run. All they have to do is swap out all of the electrical components and the engine.
And the engine, yeah.
Possibly the
I've
transmission.
been there, done that. You know,
right.
I still have the car, but it doesn't work.
All right, that was from CBS News, by the way, and we've got an item coming up from Clean Energy Wire.
Yeah, this is a portent of things to come.
Right.
Renewables cover 100% of German power use for the first time ever.
Germany crossed a symbolic milestone in its energy transition by briefly covering about 100% of its energy use, of its electricity use, with renewable energy sources for the first time ever on the 1st of January. In the whole of last year, the world's fourth largest economy produced a record 36.1% of its total power needs with renewable energy sources.
That's the whole year.
That's for the year.
Wow.
That's right.
Well, quick takeaway here. At about 6 o'clock on the 1st of January, a combination of strong winds and low demand meant that wind power alone produced about 85% of Germany's power consumption.
Yep.
Hydro and biomass covered the rest.
Yep.
The country's progress in emissions reductions stagnated, however, for the third year in a row,
Yeah.
likely putting its self-imposed 2020 climate targets out of reach.
Yeah, and they've actually started talking about changing those climate targets. So
Have they really?
Yeah.
So they can be.
They've acknowledged the fact that this is out of reach. Okay, we have an item coming up from the Union of Concerned Scientists. And
There's also a picture
satellite
here,
image.
and I'll pull that picture up. That's the satellite image of Winter Storm Grayson, which just came by.
Yes,
That's
indeed.
the bomb cyclone.
That's the bomb cyclone.
Wow. Looks like a hurricane, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Now, where is that picture? Oh, I can see it's New Jersey, New York,
Yeah, it's off the coast of Virginia.
the Delmarva Peninsula.
Yeah,
Yep.
basically.
Long Island's there, Cape
yeah.
Cod's there. The whole East Coast, Northeast there is.
Yeah,
And we're in the background there.
Yep.
And we got some of that cold weather.
we got
didn't we?
some of it, but nowhere near as bad as a lot of people along the coast did. Okay, got a
Three
title?
questions worth answering in the wake of Superstorm Grayson. This is a good article.
It
This
is.
One, if you read one at all from this series, this is it.
I'd pick a different one, but that's okay.
This is a good article,
This is a good
no
article.
matter what.
This is by a scientist who said, my colleagues and I think about coastal flooding a lot, but the footage from yesterday had our brains buzzing with new unknowns and threats never considered. It was not simply how do we prepare for storms like this, it's how do we prepare for a future. They're upset.
Well, there's again a takeaway. Yesterday in Massachusetts, we were asking ourselves questions that have rarely, if ever, needed asking. In the end, severe flooding struck multiple areas of the coast of Massachusetts, from the North Shore to the Cape, with chest-high water in some locations.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen in Massachusetts.
No, no.
Emergency boat rescues and damage that we're just beginning to take stock of. People were caught off guard, greatly increasing the risk to public safety and damage to property.
Right.
And again, well, this is where is that picture of the Gloucester High School parking lot.
Right.
Wow.
I wonder what it was like in the place that I used to live, because I used to live on a peninsula with the Jones River going around it, going into Duxbury Harbor.
I bet it got wet.
And the only road off that peninsula when Hurricane Bob hit was submerged. And you know, you don't want to walk, you don't want to drive through even half an inch of salt water.
No, you don't.
It's really bad for your car. And I mean, you drive through it and a year later your car falls apart. But with this thing, it would be interesting to know how far underwater that was. Okay, this is from Sunday, January 7th, and it comes from the Keene Sentinel. The winter storm was just the type of scenario Energy Secretary Rick Perry cited as a reason to subsidize coal and nuclear power plants. But so far, the region's electric grid has responded with little disruption apart from the shutdown of the Pilgrim nuclear plant, which happened because the off-site power was disrupted.
They lost the lines.
Yeah.
They lost the transmission lines.
And you know, a lot of people don't realize this, but when a nuclear plant loses the power that it draws in from the grid, it can't supply it. So
well, it's got emergency generators.
that's what they have to do. But when they get into that, a lot of times they shut the plant down.
They have to keep it going because it's going to burn up. It's going.
Right.
What do they call it?
Meltdown.
Meltdown. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, they have to keep even if they have the whole reactor down and in a safe mode, they still have to have electricity for a bunch of purposes, not the least of which is keeping the water circulating in the spent fuel pool.
Cooling it. They still have to cool it.
Yep.
Bingo.
And so the Pilgrim plant wasn't the only one. I think it was Oyster Creek. They had to reduce the power level because of the storm. But they didn't have to shut down.
Well, the vice president of the ISO, an independent system operator,
Yeah,
that covers all of this, is saying we have a diverse fleet not linked to any one fuel.
yeah.
And that's
That's
probably a good
important.
idea.
That is really important, and it's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why Rick Perry's thing just wasn't going to work. I mean, that was a
Well, that was rather transparent, I think.
yeah.
Well, let's
Okay.
move along.
Okay.
We got another picture coming up here.
We do, and
This is a pretty picture. I
It's
like
a
this
pretty
one.
picture.
I
Yeah,
saved this for a screensaver.
yeah. This article is from India Today.
Oceans are losing their oxygen as the Earth warms.
Yep. Global warming is making the world's oceans sicker, depleting them of oxygen and harming delicate coral reefs more often. In coastal water bodies, including estuaries and seas, low oxygen sites have increased more than tenfold since 1950. Scientists expect oxygen to continue dropping even outside these zones as the Earth warms.
So this has a potential for changing the life forms there.
We're moving in a direction of not being able to get seafood.
There may be no seafood.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of people don't realize this. Where I live, we have a greenhouse, and the greenhouse has got a bunch of fish tanks in it.
Yeah.
And the fish tanks range in size from 100 gallons to 300 gallons. There's 5 of them, I guess. And so there's a lot of water in there, but there's also a lot of fish. Almost all of them are goldfish. No, it's just, what can I say? Goldfish are not very good to eat. But anyway, one of the things about this is that those fish don't need any air in the winter.
They what?
Don't need any air.
They don't.
No. Because
They're frozen in ice or
no,
something?
no. The top of the tank can have 5 inches of ice on it, and the fish are down in the bottom, and they're snug and
they're happy.
Seem to be happy. They don't need food because they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
The water is so cold that there's very little activity going on, but that cold water will also hold a lot of oxygen.
Uh-huh.
So before it ices over, it collects a lot of oxygen, and they've got the oxygen they need for the winter.
They're set. Yeah.
They're set. Warm things up and fish run into trouble. And when you get to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, there are not many species of fish that will survive.
We're going to be talking about something like that a little later on.
Yeah. Okay. So our next item is from Clean Technica.
This is interesting. A huge China reforestation campaign kicks into high gear.
This is cool.
Yeah.
It's fair to say that China is putting its money where its mouth is when it comes to pollution and climate change, which, of course, climate change is a hoax that the Chinese made up so they could get the Americans to spend money uselessly. And somehow they managed to believe it themselves, so they're spending their money. Now China has announced a reforestation program that will plant enough trees in 2018 to cover an area the size of Ireland.
In case you don't know how big Ireland is, about the same size as Maine.
Forests already cover 21.7% of the country. That figure is set to increase to 23% by 2020 and 26% by 2035.
That's interesting.
Isn't it?
A quick takeaway here, as part of its cleanup campaign, and China has needed a cleanup campaign.
Oh, yeah.
China has been installing vast amounts of renewable energy from wind, solar, and hydroelectric sources and decommissioning coal-fired stations as quickly as possible. It is also pushing the EV revolution hard.
Hard.
And may be one of the first nations to ban the sale of cars with internal combustion engines.
Half of the battery-powered cars in the world are sold in China.
I think you're going to see Chinese cars popping up on American shores very shortly.
Very soon.
And they're all going to be electric.
Yeah, and this is making China great again, Donald Trump's proposal, let's make China great. China has a great past, let's give it a great present.
Well, they're rapidly going ahead with battery-powered cars.
Mm-hmm.
And
with
as the
renewable
batteries
energy.
get better, they're going to get cheaper.
Next week, because this appeared today and it doesn't go in today's program yet, because you have to read it before we go to the particulate pollution in Beijing is down over 50% from what it was last year.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Now that's progress.
It's progress. It's a beautiful picture
Beijing's been pretty
of the
bad.
Beijing area.
You
With
can see in Beijing
yeah,
now, huh?
they have a beautiful blue sky
Wow.
over Beijing.
How about that?
Okay, we're up to Monday, January 8th, and we have an item from KTUU.com.
We also got a picture here.
Do we? Yes, we do. That's right. There it is. Let's put it up.
I shall try to. Anchorage in springtime.
That's what it is.
There's a song about that.
Is it really? I thought it was called Moonlight in Vermont. Okay, what do you got?
Still no below 0 days for Anchorage.
What's going on here?
That was as of last Monday.
Yeah, we were having a cold snap, which, by the way, didn't break any records where I live, but
Let me look at that.
nevertheless,
That's a
it
pretty
was
town,
a cold
isn't it?
snap.
Wow.
Anchorage has yet to see an official temperature below 0 for this winter. This makes it the 4th latest date for that to occur. In the winter of 2000 to 2001, no below 0 temperatures were recorded at all, including that year all of the 5 latest dates for sub-zero temperatures in Anchorage have happened since the year 2000. So this is a trend.
It's interesting. It's a trend, definitely.
It's a trend.
And besides the temperature, December 2017 was the 3rd least snowiest December on record, with only 2.1 inches of snow for the month.
We had a thing last year about the Iditarod, and they had to import snow
Yeah, they
for it.
did. Right.
Man, this is officially crazy weather we're having. This is not, by the way, just weather. This is climate we're talking about, and anybody who doesn't know the difference between the two should look them up.
There's a big difference.
Yeah, Donald Trump and company, they
Included.
talk. Yeah. They don't know what the difference is, so,
Well,
okay.
as of January 1st, this snow season, which, by the way, is the whole year,
Yes.
is the 4th least snowiest. Least snowiest?
Least snowy.
With a total snowfall of 10.4 inches. That's for a year.
So far. We're not done with it.
It's for the year ending January 1st.
Ending January 1st.
For the whole previous year.
All right.
So
Now we're clear. Okay.
not much snow in Anchorage.
We've got more coming
Which
up.
is it's in Alaska's Sun Belt.
It's in Alaska's Sunbelt, and anybody who used to watch Northern Exposure will know all about the what did they call that? The Riviera of Alaska. That's what they call it. We've got an item from Clean Technica coming up.
This one's good. This is a good article too. 2017, the 2nd hottest year on record, after only 2016.
There you go. 2017 was the 2nd hottest year on record with regard to global average temperatures, after only 2016, according to a report from the Copernicus Climate Change Service. It was a year of extremes with many wildfires, very low sea ice extent, and lots of drought. Now, of the 17 hottest years on record, 16 are in this century.
Now this is global that they're talking about.
Yes,
This is worldwide.
it is. And so much for the hiatus that started in 1998. I'm sorry.
And there's second order consequences here that aren't very pretty.
No, there's
The high level of heat was accompanied by abnormally high levels of wildfires, which
Yep.
we talked about, very abnormally low sea ice extent and thickness, and high levels of drought in various parts of the world.
It's not good. It's not good. Okay, our next item is from BBC.
The BBC, burning tanker off Chinese coast in danger of exploding. I've read about this same thing elsewhere. It's kind of scary.
It did explode, by the way.
Did it?
Yeah, but not entirely. It was a small explosion and the thing is still floating. There are fears of an environmental disaster in the East China Sea as a tanker continues to leak oil 2 days after colliding with a cargo ship. Chinese officials have told state media the Sanchi is in danger of exploding and sinking. Rescuers attempting to reach the site are being beaten back by toxic clouds, according to the Transportation Ministry. Now, there were about, I think it was 33 people on that ship, and they have no...
They're all missing, aren't they?
They're all missing, and under the circumstances, I would have to say that I personally would just assume that they're all dead
They
because
probably
they're
are.
in a toxic cloud there.
And by the way, what this tanker had on is also interesting. 136,000 tons of highly polluting kind of oil they call condensate. It's a ultralight version of crude oil that does not dissipate easily. It's got all sorts of bad effects.
But it does not effervesce like the oil there from the.
I don't think so. The article didn't mention that, but this is worse than if it was that black gooey stuff.
Yeah.
This is actually worse.
Yeah. Okay, we are up to Tuesday, January 9th.
Well, we got a picture
and
here.
we have a
coming up,
picture
too.
here, which is a pretty picture. But
This is kind of nice.
it is.
This is a hailstorm in Minnesota.
Yeah, and
Look
this
at that.
is an article from CNN.
U.S. shatters record for disaster costs in 2017. This is a good article.
Yes,
it's
it is.
long. It's informative. It really goes
A
into
lot
detail.
of information. 2017 was the costliest year ever for weather and climate disasters in the United States, NOAA announced, totaling $306 billion. The previous record year, 2005, saw 215 billion. So it's 306 billion compared to 215 billion in disasters. Last year saw 16 weather events that each topped $1 billion in damage, including 3 record-breaking hurricanes.
Well, they didn't have a record-breaking nor'easter, but it happened the day after,
Yes.
January 1st.
Yeah, that weather.
The bomb cyclone.
Yeah, the bomb cyclone. That weather that we have pictured there, by the way, that's a Minnesota hailstorm, and I don't know whether it is in the storms that caused the problem, but there was a weather event in Minnesota that was over $1 billion that was a hailstorm.
Well, hail isn't always the size of BBs. I mean, hailstones can be quite large sometimes.
I remember when I was a kid, my older brother and I were in the back seat of our car, my father driving. I was about 4 years old, and the car was suddenly being bombarded by hail the size of golf balls.
Wow, that's
And
scary.
my father was worried that it would damage the car. That was one thing, and I don't recall that it did, or put holes in the roof. And of course, that's going to be a function not only of the size of the hail, but also how hard it is, because a lot of those big pieces of hail are very slushy and they fracture on impact. The ones that are the size of baseballs, which do happen, are usually pretty soft. But I remember that he held a coat up to cover us while we raced for the door so that we wouldn't get hit by hail. My mother was very upset.
I bet.
Yeah. Okay, we are up to an article also from January 9th from Think Progress.
Rick Perry's plan to make taxpayers bail out coal and nuclear rejected by a federal agency.
Yeah, this has been all over the news ever since it happened. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, again it's FERC, unanimously rejected Energy Secretary Rick Perry's plan to subsidize coal and nuclear plants by raising consumer energy bills. This was a major blow to the Trump administration's effort to bring back coal power, especially since 3 of the 5 commissioners are Trump appointees.
That's pretty interesting.
Well, they're planning on finding another way of dealing with energy, and we have no idea where they're going to go with that. FERC is doing this.
How about in order to get your welfare, you gotta pump a bicycle-powered generator?
I don't know.
Well, here's a quick takeaway. FERC directly rejected the notion that power prices needed to be tweaked to reward coal and nuclear, saying that the proposed rule, well, there's a lot of gobbledygook here, said it was unjust and unreasonable.
Well, you know, this is a problem that Rick Perry had and Donald Trump had.
Didn't he say before he was nominated to control it, he was going to eliminate it?
That's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And you know, this is a problem with the way the Republican Party and the conservatives are approaching these things, because they ostensibly are in favor of a free market, which means that they want no subsidies for anybody.
Except themselves.
Well, I mean, in theory,
Yeah.
they're saying no subsidies for
Now, you
anybody.
used to be a Republican, weren't you?
I'm still conservative in general, but you know, these people aren't conservative.
No, not really.
Nothing like conservative.
Not really.
I mean, you ask me about conservative, I'm going to point out that Theodore Roosevelt was the guy who invented federal game reserves, and Richard Nixon was the guy who established the EPA. What happened to that kind of thinking? Really? Yeah, I voted for conservative presidential candidates consistently from the first time Richard Nixon ran for president until the first time George W. Bush did. And I haven't voted for a Republican since. And the reason is, in 2004, I looked at the material from 2003, and I could see that it was absolutely abundantly clear that climate change was happening, but the administration in Washington denied it. So why would they do that? Well, for the same reason that Rick Perry wanted to have coal and nuclear subsidized, which was because the government...
Isn't it the letter S with a couple of lines through it?
I think that's what it is. Somebody has purchased a Congress for $1 billion, and they want a return on their investment.
The Cole brothers, right?
The Coal Brothers. the Blues Brothers of coal. The Blues Brothers of fossil fuels.
Oy vey.
Oy vey, yes. Well, I don't think oy vey is correct. That's because I don't think they're Yiddish. I think that we've got to come up with something else.
Well, let's talk about turtles.
Turtles. Okay.
We don't have a picture, do we?
We don't, but this is from National Geographic.
A lot of pictures and videos in this article.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Yeah.
99% of these sea turtles are turning female. Why? A lot of pictures, a lot of videos.
Yeah.
These turtles, these are great. When they show the videos of these turtles underwater, they're flying. Just like birds, but they're underwater.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I
Well,
mean,
this is interesting to me because it means that transsexuals are natural. There are transsexuals in nature.
I guess so.
Okay. Since the sexes of sea turtles are determined, actually, I have to back up from that because these guys, by and large, have a sex that they acquire in the egg, and that's good for life. Although there are animals that are changing. Since the sexes of sea turtles are determined by the heat of the sand incubating their eggs, and by the way, females are established from hotter sand, which means that in a clutch of eggs, the females are at the top and the males are at the bottom.
Okay.
You see?
Okay.
So it's very simple. Scientists doing a survey expected that with climate change there would be slightly more females. But instead, they found female sea turtles from the Pacific Ocean's largest green sea turtle rookery, and others, by the way, now outnumbered males by at least 116 to 1. That's not good news.
Well, that male's not going to have a problem finding a date on Saturday night, is
No, but the females are going to find problems because the males are just not going to be able to get
Well, here's what the article says.
Yeah.
This is extreme. This is in quotes.
Yeah.
Like capital letters extreme, exclamation point extreme.
Yeah.
We're talking a handful of males to hundreds and hundreds of females.
Yep.
We're shocked. But what happens in 20 years when there are literally no more males coming up as adults? Are there enough to sustain a population?
So we might
It's
go
going to be
extinct.
20 years for this to happen.
Yeah, they might go extinct because of hopefully in that 20 years scientists will be able to do something, and hopefully it won't require genetic modification.
And they're worried that this phenomenon is affecting other sea turtle populations that they haven't been studying.
Absolutely. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, January 10th, and we've got a picture of Queens.
Yeah, we do.
This is
Seaside Heights.
Seaside Heights in Queens. And this is an article
These are
from...
practically ocean front.
Yeah.
And you rent one of those rooms for the summertime for the cost of a car.
Yeah. You know, when I lived in Plymouth, which was 30 years ago, you could get a really nice oceanfront apartment for $500 a month, but it was a month-by-month basis, and you had to be out by the 1st of May. And
Oh,
then
boy.
after
Okay.
that, it was about $3,000 a week.
Okay, well, these are very, very expensive.
Yeah.
This is the Rockaway section of
Yeah.
Queens.
And this is from Next City.
New York City's new flood phew, can't even talk.
Yeah.
New York City's new flood maps will factor in climate change.
New York City will be the first major city to be remapped by FEMA. That's the Federal Energy, FEMA. I'm sorry, that is the Federal Emergency
Management Agency.
Agency, with climate change in mind, according to a report in the New York Times. Cartographers will take into account the new normal of rising sea levels and increasingly frequent 100-year and 500-year storms. FEMA's maps represent the agency's floodplain estimates.
Well, what's important about this, if a property is located inside one of these floodplains, the owners must get flood insurance.
Yeah, but you
Okay.
know what? They can't get flood insurance if the property has had 2 claims over the last 10
Yeah.
years. So
Catch-22.
it's a catch-22, and it will absolutely demolish the value of this real estate in time.
If you can't get flood insurance, you can't live in it, can you?
You can live in it, but
At
you
your
know,
own risk.
At your own
Yeah.
risk, yeah. And you're not going to be able to. If your house has had 2 flood claims in the last 10 years, try selling it, because whoever is buying it is
Can't
going to
get
have
flood insurance.
not going to get flood insurance.
And a little takeaway here is in New York City, 80% of the properties in the city as a whole were built even before the current flood maps.
Yes.
And they're upgrading them.
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to hurt a lot of people.
This is going to hurt a lot of people. Not in Brooklyn Heights,
No.
but you know, there are places where this is going to be a difficult problem. Okay, we're up to an article from Power Engineering magazine.
FERC predicts over 116 gigawatts of new wind and solar and continued coal retirements.
Over 116 gigawatts of new wind and solar capacity is expected to be installed in the United States through the end of 2020, according to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission projection. That total includes 72.5 gigawatts of wind in 465 units and 43.5 gigawatts of solar in 1,913 units. However, coal is expected to lose 20.7 gigawatts. So,
Couple quick takeaways here. Even with the shift away from coal, FERC indicated 2 gigawatts of new coal capacity in 4 new units has been proposed. And the second part of it is, though FERC's report noted 3.2 gigawatts of new nuclear in 4 new units are in development, only the 2 units at the Vogtle expansion are presently under construction.
So they've lost 2 of the 4.
5.6 gigawatts in 6 units are projected to retire by 2020.
Yeah, so we're losing
We're
nuclear.
losing nuclear.
Yeah, and we've known that for quite a while, and you and I have been saying that we didn't expect the units in South Carolina to be, or the ones in Georgia to be
That's
completed. The Vogtle is in Georgia. They are still scheduled to be completed. They're half done.
And aren't they already way behind and way over budget?
Yes, they
Whoa.
are. And you know, I mean, at some point, somebody's going to say, well, why would we buy power from a nuclear power plant when we can buy power from solar plus battery for a quarter of the cost?
Duh.
Okay, so that brings us up to our next
This is the
article,
last
which
item.
is the last, and it's going to take a little time to talk about. But
we got time.
we have the
Got a
time.
picture here coming up,
and
too.
this
How
is
about
from
that?
Energy Storage News, as promised.
Well, that's a wind farm in Idaho. It's a real wind farm.
It's a real wind farm. That's right.
Pretty
with
interesting.
real
nice,
snow.
Nice picture, actually.
It is actually, yes.
Incredible low prices for renewables plus storage in Excel's solicitation.
And
I'll
it-
explain what that all means.
Yeah, well as I can. And this was mind-boggling to me for a bunch of different reasons, one of which was the size of the solicitation. I just can't, it's hard to wrap my brain around the amount of energy they're asking for. But having said that, the other thing, which is what this article is actually about, is the prices.
Now, who is Xcel Energy?
Xcel Energy is a energy provider that operates nationwide.
So they're like a holding company of energy.
Yes, I think that might be, and they are well known for their investments in renewable energy.
Okay.
And Xcel
So
Energy,
they're looking for sources that they can basically package and sell.
that's right. An Xcel Energy solicitation for 238 projects
That is significant.
of renewable energy resources with battery backup drew 430 proposals, almost twice as many as they were asking for, with record low median prices. Now, should we explain what a median price is?
Yes.
Probably. It's kind of like an average, but it's not an average.
Sort of, yeah.
If you have a bunch of things and to establish the median price, you're saying half of those things are either at the median price or lower, and half of them are at the median price or higher.
So it's the price that's right in the middle.
It's the price that's right in the middle. And if you consider, imagine that you had apples for sale and 5 of them cost a nickel and 1 of them costs $28. All right, well, the average is going to
pretty high.
be pretty high, but the median price is a nickel.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you see, so it's different from the average.
That's
but
a good explanation.
yeah, nevertheless, wind with storage drew 5,700 megawatts of bids with a median price at 2.1 cents per kilowatt hour.
Amazing.
Wind and
cents?
solar, huh?
2 cents?
Yeah,
Wow.
wind plus solar with storage drew 4,048 megawatts in bids at 3.06 cents per kilowatt hour. And solar with storage drew 16,725 megawatts at 3.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, doing the math in my head just really quickly here, that comes to, I'm going to say 27,000 megawatts. Vermont Yankee was 620 megawatts, is that right?
I think after they increased it,
Yeah.
I
So
always
this-
think of it as 500.
This just dwarfs the size of the Vermont Yankee nuclear
Absolutely.
plant. And this, by the way, is a long-term solicitation. They're talking about over a period of years.
And this is what they call the levelized cost of energy.
Right.
Which is the lifetime costs divided by the amount of energy
Right.
they produce.
Now, so that everybody understands this, Lazard Associates produces the estimates of the levelized cost of electricity, and they are the one organization I see quoted the most, and they are the one I regard as most trustworthy because what they're trying to do is to produce an estimate that is of use to financial investors.
Yeah, these are investor
And
advisors.
if they aren't on the money,
They're out of business.
they're going to lose
Yeah.
customers. So their estimate of the cost of combined cycle natural gas, which is the cheapest fossil fuel that they have on their list, is 4.2 to 7.8 cents per kilowatt hour. And that comes to an average, not average,
So this
in the
is
middle.
This is half that price.
Yeah. Combined cycle natural gas is 6 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the middle of the whole thing, which is just a figure that's the average of the high and the low.
And last year the prices were historically low.
Yeah. So it's going to go up from there. 6 cents per kilowatt hour as the average of the high and low. And that 6 cents is against a median price of 2.1 for wind and battery, 3.06 for wind, solar, and battery, or 3.6 for solar and battery. And all of these solicitations were not happening in North Dakota. They're all over the country.
All over the country, right? Yeah.
So what does that
we see
tell
a
you?
trend here.
This is more than a trend. This is shocking. This is absolutely shocking. If I were a person managing a portfolio of stock, for example, I would say, okay, time to get rid of every stock we've got that has companies that are invested in fossil fuel produced electricity. Tom, we're over on our time, so we're going to have to say goodbye.
We are. We'll have to squeeze this into it. Let me pull us both up here so they see
There
what I
you
look
go.
like.
There we are.
Here we are.
See you next time, folks.